7112 West Overnight Place, Kenneth, Washington, and Mr. Andy Miller's office has the preliminary of the Washington reports. Also, the service, Mr. Dixon, staying a week over at Superior Court, Adams County, with the coroner. There's a coroner as well at the Richville 210 West Broadway. Specifically, COVID-19, the 19 virus. Publications on the pursuits of advice of the Washington Court Commissions has the administration judges. It's Richville, Mr. Dixon, and before that was Miller. Miller has been there for a long time. Also, the 60 years expenditure of increments, Mr. J. Mueller and Fingerhome, which is COVID-19 parking lot. Still, the increments for the coroner's office, 7110 West Okanagan, is Honorable Steve B. Dixon. That's Richville, P.O. Box 210 West Broadway, Richville, Washington 99169. That's P.O. Box 187. Mr. Honorable Steve Dixon's been in with connections and services with Mr. Scudder and Mr. Scudder, and also Mr. and Mrs. Administration of Miller and Susan Kirkendall. Kirkendall is works with Staples, and this Staples is STAPL here. Now it's other increments of their services for 712 West Okanagan Place, Kenneth, Washington. That's GOCJOSIE Delvin DELVIN. Miss Staples and then Susan Crook on the 220 West Broadway. Before that, there was a prosecutor for District Court in Othello. He's no longer working for Othello Wash. He got fired. Mr. Judge Bureau got fired. District Court, 25 years. And also Mr. Brandon West. And Mr. Scudder's no longer working for the administration office, I guess. The Washington Bar Association bar stipulation for the $4,000 cash received for Felix Barela. They didn't find out they didn't do nothing or any kind of sort in this administration office. I'll give you an end tune on service for the sheriff and officers breaking into the doorway, intimidating the staff members here at the, it says Veterans Courtroom, Mental Health Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And then there's several individuals behind this doorway and some more individuals behind that doorway. And then they came in here. They came in the mental health veterans office door. They came to this doorway. And the other employees, staff members, are sitting in the back. And he was coming here with intentions with harm. He had a gun, taser, mental health, and veterans fair. And he's despising making conversation, wedging his way into the doorway. He was wedging his doorway into the way with intimidation with his gun and also this taser in increments of his services. I have no warrants, outstanding warrants for my arrest. I have no out-of-state California state warrants of arrest. I walked all the way from the state of San Luis Obispo Governor's Office and Secretary Kim WYMAN. Mr. Steve Felice, J. Felice, 190 East Main Street. And same individual has confrontations and attacked me on the sidewalk. He went in the entranceway here. He went in both three directions. And then he came and made a conversation. And the Metro Task Force and the supervisor, State Patrol, Mr. State Patrol Soderman, he's dead. But Jay Mueller is testifying in increments on the dead body that's over at Columbia Center Boulevard, increments of the red line. And this Veterans Court Mental Health, he was sitting there making conversation saying that there was a confrontation or service or whatnot, and he's making conversation, and I'm sitting right here. He approached me in several matters with the individuals looking through this window in increments, applying his employment services in increments, making fabrication lies, and then the conversation, the making with opening a door in conversation, having increments of applying some individual service of COVID-19 service, the blood samples and the laptop Cincinnati and the door, the increments on the service for barging his way in, intimidating the staff members, and making conversation, trying to have a miscommunication in his service, how he said warrants are outstanding warrants, and there's warrants are outstanding warrants for my arrest. And I'm applying the individual Walker's Furniture that's paid for at Cimaron 59C, and also the key that opens this door, and the latch that opens this door. That's Andy Miller at Seal Bed and Wash, and that's the coroner's office, Mr. Frank Camusco, in the Civic 19. As you can see, the implied services and their increments on their individual manhood and their interviews that was taken. Mr. Bender. Mr. Bender is the same guy, now he's wearing a sheriff uniform. He was raped here at Benton County. And F, A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, E, and F unit. They penetrated his penis into his anus, just like Mr. Goldsmith, and he's a jailer. Eugene F. Pratt, he's the judge, and also the Eugene F. Pratt, and also Mr. Whitensteiner, and also the sheriff and deputies Hodges and Kennedy. Anyways, they put a uniform on him, and he came in the entranceway with his gun and his tasers, applying his intimidation. And I got a outlet that's Benton County, that's at Benton POD, Richland POD, that's a frat house, manor house, Carl's Jr. Administration Office. And that's Timbers Apartments number 222. And that's the inlet we're going to use for the murder scene there. Increments, he came from the doorway, he made a conversation. He said he represented this, represented that, and that. And then he blindsided, and then there's groups of people in the back door entranceway on both sides. And increments on that. That's the dead recipient, Mr. Lola Hernandez and Samuel Hernandez. He has no legs, no fingers, and he's talking to Andy Miller, letting him know that I'm Felix Barela, and I'm at California, San Jose, California, which is Amir Singh Nijjar, and he's a billionaire. He's from India, the president of India, the increments in family hoods and services. That's it in the parking lot. As you can see, it says change the office hours, service response, COVID-19, emergency declaration, abundance and the concern, maintaining safety and health of public employees, public prosecuting officers, the sheriff with the uniform and taser, intimidating individuals. See, the tasers and the prongs wouldn't work because it's in my leg. The tasers and prongs that's in my leg, it's over in now the staples and the stitches are in Andy Miller's office with the laptop. So it says starting Wednesday, March 18, 2020, 1 p.m., prosecutor's office will be closed to the petitions. Now, this is guys from Findlay, Washington. They didn't know how to get rid of my dead body, so they started burning my body. And then they threw fuel on my body. And then they threw my body in the Columbia River and floated me down the Columbia River. So they dragged my body out of the river, and this is at Findlay Park and Kennewick, Washington, Congra, Lamb West, and Bowles Road. Sent Amber, Mandy, and Carrie Snow White, and the Tanner family. Didn't know how to get rid of my dead body. So Andy Miller has these individuals come to the important, and also the individual behind the door, using Andy Miller's entranceway as portrayal and service of increments. Reminds of me or not, they remarked that there is a conversation came out of his mouth, and the individuals made confrontations and lacerations and confrontations about how to get rid of the 32 South Main Street, Moran. This is change response, reserve it, and respond to COVID-19. And they had guns and tasers at that point, but the prongs didn't work out, so they got fired. Fabian's pretty big, so Fabian wants to know where he lives. So they have canine dogs, and also the Andy Miller's office in Samuel Hernandez, California, has fully rights to have him shot. They will have a lot of weapons on up on the floor, especially the Felix Barela up here. Prongs were removed out of my leg. I put them and left them in Andy Miller's office, and also with the stitches and a laptop that's in Miss Taylor's office and Miss Taylor. As you can see, I don't go to fairgrounds, and I don't drink alcohol, and I don't condone with gangbangers as they have sex and have semi-fights. There's COVID-19, and there's mass death call at 7112. That's at the coroner's office. Jay Mueller, Frank Kamisko, and Amy Mueller at Highlands Middle School at the LDS Church and Steakhouse Vice President office. And that's Red Lion. And Fabian will be here shortly. And Lola Hernandez's dead body. And Satterman's dead body, that's her. So they have any guns or increments on the service, I'm sure it's going to help out for them. They're going to convict them for murder in the first degree. Premeditated murder is a good charge. see all the individuals that come in here and threaten the staff members in such a way that can be witnesses all day long.
You know, the clerks are telling people that they're open till 4 o'clock.
Now, Ben County Franklin judges is Joseph and Burrows, Alex Erickson, Carmen Mitchell, Carrie L. Rung, which is Superior of the Services of Ben Franklin, that's A, B, C, D, E, and F. Mr. Bender was raped and is anus, and that's F and G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, E, F, that's E, F, yeah. So that he's wearing a sheriff uniform for $1 million. That's what happens when you get a mop and the mop gets removed and processed and used as a weapon. As you can tell, didn't work out too far for him. Mr. Goldilocks, Mr. Schmidt family, and Schmidt family has Mr. Goldilocks driving the BFT bus around and dealing with Lola Hernandez, Roberta Barela, and his situation of having dead state patrolman pulled out apartment 205, Secretary Apartments. And the increments on that, the United States U.S. government issued gun, hardware gun, that's never been used anyways for robbing or deploying or intimidating individuals, as you can see up here in Annie Miller's office. The disadvantage they have for Benton Franklin is Joseph Z. Burrows, Alex Erickson, Carmen Mitchell, Carrie L. Rung, Jacqueline Shee Brown, which is the Washington State prosecutor, now a judge. Bruce A. Spanner and Samuel P. Sponger, that's Benton City. And Lola Hernandez got all the photo records and increments of decoration, and also the death certificate. In Benton City, that's the house on the Yakima River that connects to the flooding ordinance for the military staff that sits the Hummer and the bridge. A long time ago, property rights and services for the water foul system has been working for emergency alerts. Fabian Barela and the increments on his services for his driver's license in Nebraska, Washington, driving from Charlie Cox, called Easterday Farms, Malcolm Momo, which is United States Marine Corps from Columbia Basin College, which is named Fred. Now Fred, he's dead now, and Donald Trump has his headstone plotted at the Mueller Spring Home, J. Mueller Administration Office. He's nothing but a methamphetamine crackhead lost in the society of CDC. Dropouts and degenerates and losers, gangbangers associated with the corporatizing the intermittent of their services as they now do in the West Shore of COVID-19, which are detainees and habitual offenders in the Avon Road. Mr. Carol Rung's talking to Mr. Didier, he's a loser as well. Mr. Steve York, 8,000 witnesses, his testimony of all these gangbangers and Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Taliban members for his celebration. He's a good-sized man, about 380 pounds. He's a good size of Daryl Johnson's body, and the cardboard box, which is $100, cremation $2,000, using aviation fuel in the cremator, which is $80,000 paid for. The old cremator is a simulated Burger King incinerator. Any body, big bodies, like 400, 500 bodies, has to be done like 10, 12 times. And it's like a Burger King conveyor belt or Carl's Jr. conveyor belt. The body dynamics, smells, the hair, the whatnot. Make sure the maggots aren't getting. You make sure everything's burnt to crisp. But those bodies is a skeleton. It's basically a leftover skeleton. The head, the body, the legs, everything's intact, except if you don't, if you're a borderline or a active AIDS patient, or even diabetic. There's going to be some arms and limbs missing, of course, but those increments on your what the death was, the death of cause of death, as you can see, Mr. J. Miller Station and Coroner's Office 7110. Those are, that's in the back of the warehouse at one time, but that's no more. Now it's sanitized and cleaned out. See, back in the Blue Bridge and Cable days, there's no Negroes allowed, and Adams County Courthouse says no Negroes allowed in the historic library. It's called University of Washington. University of Washington, they have signs and logo services, and over the Columbia Bridge, the mighty Columbia Bridge, the Green Bridge, the Green River Killer. That's, of course, Ted Bundy, Kennel High School. He killed several students at Kennel High School and killed several undersheriffs and agencies in skirts of all the campuses. And, the guy that lived was Mr. Walston, a child molester, rapist in Kennel High School. And Mr. Pickrell survived that increments of that live tell of increments of proving that Mr. Walston's a child molester. And the increments carried on to the Kennel High School and South Ridge High School, and carried on to, of course, the University of Washington University and Pike and Bill Gates Foundation. Mr. Bill Gates in increments is saying that Mr. Walston is a child molester. Mr. Felix Barela increments of my size, increments of my size. I could take anybody 10, 20 size my size. That's Bill Gates' statement. It's kind of hard to see Felix falling down for increments of people pulling him or yanking him or having some kind of way stabbing him in the Simon's Mall in Spokane, with several Marines and Green Berets and also Navy SEALs trying to stab him at the Simon's Mall and Spokane, Washington Division. But I took him all down in such a way and grabbed his testicles and squeezed him to increments to make sure he comes to the hospital so we can get his signature, his first name, his last name. Since he worked for the FBI CI Academy, the elite force and service, and said the mask belonged to the United States Navy and it don't belong to him. It belongs to USS Washington. The flag that flies in Mueller's funeral home is USS Washington. The cremator that sits there, and the old cremator that sits there, is mine and paid for. And I mean Mueller's apartment complex, that she has that little apartment complex and the Ford Focus, not the Metro Police Department, because Jay Mueller don't have no interest in dealing with anybody that has a badge uniform as the State Patrolman Sovereign grandson is on their headstones on the wall of Manny Miller's office and with a laptop. You have your prongs, your mace, and your increments for your taser, your prongs, and also your increments for your lacerations for the handcuffs, and is all in Manny Miller's office. And there's no guns allowed. See, the individual is sitting there barging his way in that office, and his way, and there's footprints and smell of the scent of increments of his attentions, as you can see. He'll just keep on walking off and implying himself as an individual that he looking for structural evidence and increments for breaking an entry or some sort of entrance or some kind of fabrication story, as you can see. And that's Carrie L. Round, and that's, of course, she's a prosecutor at Washington State here in Washington State University, and the increments they're applying their A, B, C, D, E, F courtrooms, and their increase on the juvenile delinquency and services that they apply. Bruce Banner and Samuel Swanberg's been stating increments on his appliance and services increments of his children. He has a lot of children, basically. And, of course, Lola Hernandez has a lot of children. Samuel Hernandez, which came up here from Fresno, California, from Hedges, all the way into Andy Miller's office, and serving Fabian Barela, Carrie Barela, Roberta Barela, Lola Hernandez, and of course, Andy Miller. And 5,000 to 10,000 people trying to take down this 420-pound, muscle-bound man. And he paid his increments to society. He's a white minority. He's the Paris Island in San Diego, USS Chicago, USS Vandenberg, and USS Comfort, Viper Nest, and Fallujah, Afghanistan, were the province and services. He lives to the day of telling increments of the whole criminal convicts, child molesters, rapists, murderers, convicts, felons, the Unabomber, of course. All these individual con artists have services from California, Pelican, Chico, Folsom, Walla Walla, Chico, but any of these donations, these periods of these donations, these false prophets have taken their manhood from their anus and put a uniform and disguised it for $1 million. I think the anus is priceless, I think. Mr. Goldsmith is prime primate, Mr. Glenn Bettner prime, Mr. Susan prime, Mr. Judy sucking off and having prenuptial sex with staff members for plea bargains. And then there Andy Miller is subsequently moving in his ranks. Mr. Samuel and Daniel Hernandez, he's about 7'1", but now he's only 6 foot. The increments of age and also the increments of their Daniel Hernandez and Dan and other Dan and Maria Hernandez in Kansas City, Nebraska, Texas, and also Waco, Texas, where I was born. Tri-City Herald. As a child, left as a child, and Waco, Texas, where they caked the compound center in Idaho and Texas. Increments because I am Felix Barela. The increments on their services you can see in the partake, and their increments of you see the fugitive justice increments that you have these fugitives running around. Apparently, it didn't scare me one bit. Fabian Barela pretty good side. Steve Yerke's a good side man. His life and his tales of fortune of nonfiction on YouTube, Facebook, and all that dialogue from responding increments on their ET transactions and EFT, FTC, and Federal Reserve increments on their fault today, like stealing driver's license, Social Security. It's a serious offense. Increments as Mr. and Mrs. And then the lawyer that's being punked for representing the Mr. Trump family, which is a Mueller's Freedom Home. There's no escaping the truth. As you see, the individuals have their way of wrecking domination, putting any kind of weapon around the side and coming to the door and wedging and threatening staff members and using their testimony and false information. It's a really serious offense, especially when you have a bullet in the chamber and a bullet, in 7 years for each woman. And that's Mr. Taylor. You ask him. How many convictions on that, Mr. Hatcher? Suspended 12, 15 years. Can't come back until Felix Barela was here and he got kicked out. With a restraining order on Monica. And the increments, as you can see, Mr. Stevenson releasing increments and serving increments on their services. And they always have the individual sarcasm of having that pay individuals with COVID-19 on the federal and state with the blood. And that blood does not, camera does not lie. And fugitive justice will say anything to get out of their jurisdiction or increments of applying themselves for throwing a Mr. Bender getting sexually raped in Benton County Justice Department in front of Carrie L. Rung and Andy Miller's office. And they put a uniform on him, and they seem like to have adopting him in a way since he's trying to squeeze in the way and intimidate individuals like in Richland, Pasco, State Department, like State Department Sodom.
Hello. Walk all the way around, right? Over that way. Maybe over here. Up there, because that's another parking spot. Going to Superior Court. Reading on air. Yeah, it's a clerk's office. Oh, we have two.
See, Diana Hernandez, and also increments of Daniel Hernandez family. And Daniel Hernandez, there's Diana Hernandez, Maria Hernandez, and of course, there is a play of service and increments on their services of their siblings, and the increments on the Mr. Sam Hernandez. It goes long. I don't know, that's a long way. Pismo Beach is a 3-hour drive nonstop. You can't pee, you can't smoke, you can't get out of the vehicle. You got a straight drive. That's 3 days. 72 hours straight to the beach, into a nuclear facility, compound facility, which is Waco, Texas, and Idaho, have fallen and crumbled. September 11 is born again. So the services in their increments of AWOL and increments on their services and their services I'm partaking. This is May 7th, 2020. See, April's coming. April's coming pretty soon. January, February, March, April, May 7th, 2020, 2:20 p.m. So the services on the Red Line thing, the Red Line, the Columbia Point, the golf court resort. All you have to do is turn the key on, and turkey igniter, and the natural propane, and also the range, and also the Papa Murphy's. It's only $7 for a combo Papa from Chicago, or Godfather's Pizza, which we served to Annie Miller's doorway. King size jumbo, meat lovers, Canadian bacon, and also the buffet cuisine. Now it's called men's workwear, men's workwear, men's wear. So when they put chovies in Mr. Annie Miller's daughter's mouth, you know, we'll serve her chovies, you know. You got those child molesters, rapists, con artists, murderers, premeditators. When they gave that chovies to her, and went down her esophagus, Annie Miller sued. He sued the whole town. He sued the entire state of Washington. So I'm sure he's going to get a scholarship out of that because of the lawsuit, of the increments of the pain, anguish of the chovies, they're like razor blades. They're like porcupine quills in the throat. And they literally have to go inside your throat and take tweezers and snip them. And if you can't snip them, you got to dig into the skin and remove the porcupine quill. See, the active porcupine quill pulls the nerve endings, like in your tongue, your mouth, your esophagus. Everything goes. So you literally have to open up your mouth and do surgery and pull all this in the archive of the chovies. So it has to be thoroughly cooked at 550 degrees, 420 degrees. And of course, Mr. Hatcher and Mr. Andy Miller will be coming to Papa Murphy's wanting some pizza from me, because the pizza that I cook is thoroughly cooked, not the raw chovy product that goes into her esophagus or into Mr. Hatcher's esophagus. You know, the rapists, child molesters that they serve and condone their services for hiring and firing. They take a hamburger and wipe their butt with it and give it to Hatcher, or take a gigantic diarrhea on one of them and wipe their butt with it in the left or right cheek and give it to Andy Miller and serve it to him. And then they take the water and they put, of course, the gag oil or increments of the embalming fluid into the water and hope he drinks it and he dies and falls over and dies of increments of natural causes. But that didn't work out that way because Felix Barela was feeding Andy Miller. So the razor-sharp sword for Godfathers and increments of the service, fear of God and their service and increments of all life, mankind. Because the Kennewick man at Columbia Park needed assistance and services, increments of the machetes and trees and limbs and the mighty Columbia River, the Budweiser, Mrs. Budweiser, Mrs. Budweiser, Mr. Budweiser, Mr. Budweiser. He was a tall man, black hair. He dyed his hair black all the time because it was gray. and talked to me about how life was and how prominent in service, how the alcohol company was a #1 thing. The Chip, the Lamb Weston, Kennewick High School, and St. Pat Church, Father Tom, Father Dylan, Father Richard, and Mr. Cepeda, which killed the U.S. Marine Corps and was involved in the murder case, and also Mr. Madison and Jay Madison and Kennewick, and Mr. Ridgway and Mr. Yates, United States Army, killing these prostitutes and enlisted fools on the streets of Arizona, and Van Buren, Phoenix area. The mainstream of prostitutes and havoc and marijuana and of course, crank and methamphetamine, Dick Cheney listing, capital, meth capital in Wyoming, Cowboy State, Mr. Bodacious PBR, Jessica, where Felix Barela abandoned her with a Ford Mustang GT 5.0 with a Barracuda parked, with the sheriff posse and the individual services of these child rapists in disguise, individuals coming and sucking up Mr. Andy. Oh no, we're going to shoot this guy and put him in the birds and go Andy Miller's off and Frank Musco's and go and turn the cremator on, and because the increments, this key involved doesn't belong to us, but we didn't do nothing wrong, sir. No, we got video. We'll erase everything. We'll take care of it and put it. Oh, really? Is that your detainment of service? Are you applying your service as an individual, sick, psychotic individual that surfaced and she said you raped her? You molested her as a child, and providing checks and increments to the Social Security office, and you didn't know what to do at that duration of Felix's dead body at the Hoover Park in Findlay, Washington? You want to burn it up and put it in the trunk and drop it off at Mueller's Funeral Home? No, sir. I didn't think he was that strong. I didn't think he could do all that with one dude. This individual, is he retarded or something or what? No. I think you need to get the fuck out of here. Shove that gun right up your ass and the taser up your ass. That's what I think. Ask any judge, any chief judge. Ask and open the door. Mr. Donald Trump's right there. I paid for it. He's sleeping on it. It's my bed. Mumu Ganja and Amir SINGH Nijjar and also all those services, they're billionaires. I'm sure they're going to take advantage of everybody and everything they get their hands on. But I built this popular series for the Mid-Columbia Library. Now it's called Public Library in Richland. It was called the Mid-Columbia Library in Richland. Now it's called the Public Library. Mid-Columbia Library is Mr. Kennewick, man. His hands moving Kennedy's bodies, Kennedy's hands, moving determines means a dead body in the ground. That means a live case. Administration, witnesses, administration office, Mr. McCain, Mr. Police Officer McCain, that executed and witnessed execution of John F. Kennedy a month later, 2 months later after he left Richland, Washington, Queensgate, which is Mr. having speech John F. Kennedy, and approaching on the residency at the 1313 West Grand Ronde. That's John F. Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy at the 1313 West Grand Ronde because he's Catholic. Father Tom, Father Dylan, Father Richard, and Mrs. Roberta, and Mr. Cy Hernandez. He's underneath the Barracuda because Felix Barela told him to fix his Barracuda or have somebody have them killed. Somebody was going to kill him, Mr. Cy Hernandez, and throw him off the bridge because Roberta McCain will take the cane upside their head. Walk around Kennewick High School as a child, punking all these individuals for their things. Boils down to they don't know how to get the red dead body, and they don't know what to do because they're full of shit, and they don't know what to do about it because they're fools. They don't even own it. It's pretty sad, isn't it? It's pretty sad. anybody do anything for drugs or some meth or some heroin, as you can tell. Mr. Chano Hernandez and then their services, Cy Hernandez, and then supplying the system with heroin, and also the services for the patches for removing the body, equipment, after equipment, internal bed, and also an IV needle, syringe that's in her vein, and also the services of applying their appliance services increments of their distancing COVID-19's sidewalk. And the body cam, they won't give up the body cam, and the body cam, you just don't do nothing about the body cam, and it's a pretty simple. You write documentation, give it to them, and they still shine it on. Just make stuff up, and they'll never get out of a situation of digging them a grave.